Hey guys, Sausage here. Somnus is an anomaly detection game where you have to traverse through 13 different levels looking for different anomalies, and to be honest, it was quite challenging. Now, not every room was challenging. There were some anomalies that were really easy, such as one room being completely empty, or one room having the fireplace completely disappear, but there were plenty of other anomalies that took me quite a while to actually learn. One of those anomalies is a pile of wood to the right of the fireplace, and the stack of wood was moved just a little bit to the right. Now, if you saw this anomaly, you might think, okay, that's kind of weird. You're gonna recognize that it was an anomaly, but unless you actually stop and look at the pile of wood, you're not going to realize that there's an anomaly there. To anyone who might be a little bit curious as well, there are no jump scares. There might be one room, one anomaly that has a type of jump scare, but it's only due to the sound. It's not there. Nothing jumps out at you. It's not a screech. It's just you walk in the room, you see something kind of weird. There's a sound, and the first time I experienced it, it was almost a jump scare. But then again, I'm just sensitive to jump scares. There is one anomaly that I think is important to mention, and that is an anomaly with spiders. If you have arachnophobia, you might want to stay away from this game until maybe the developer can put something in that will turn off that specific anomaly. It's an extremely obvious anomaly. The spiders don't chase you or jump down or anything. They're just sitting there. They're static, but it is there, so just be aware. One thing that I like that the developer included in their game is in their About section, they said that if you have any anomaly ideas, to send it on over to them and it might get included into the game. There's no guarantee, of course, but if you have an idea, the developer wants to hear about it. I myself actually have 2 anomaly ideas that I'm going to send over to the developer after I get this video out, so if you buy the game, maybe keep an eye out. You might see one of my ideas. As for the graphics and the art, it's not good, it's not bad, it's fine, it's very middle of the road, it's average, it's okay. There were some things that, didn't look too bad, and then there are others where I'm just thinking that doesn't look that great. But what really caught my eye about this game is the medieval aesthetic. Anomaly detection games are dime a dozen. Ever since Exit 8 came out, the very first anomaly detection game as far as I know, there's just been clone after clone after clone. And I like anomaly detection games, but this is the first one I've seen that was medieval themed. And like I said, that's what caught my eye. One thing I do want to mention though is that the game is really dark. I ended up closing my curtains so I could see it better. I don't know if I was missing anomalies or not, but just be aware that if you are in a room that's pretty bright, you might want to adjust something so that you can see better. It's really dark. Now, let's talk about the soundtrack, or more precisely, the lack thereof. There is no soundtrack to this game. That's not good or bad, it's just an objective observation. The lack of music could add a certain type of ambiance to the game, but I don't think that's completely accurate. The lack of music or the lack of soundtrack could make the game appear creepy, but the game itself isn't creepy. There's the one room that has a potential jump scare, kind of, or there's the one room that has spiders if you have arachnophobia, but overall, the lack of soundtrack doesn't make the game feel more creepy. It's just, there's just no soundtrack. You might like that there's no soundtrack, or maybe you don't. Really, it's a personal preference. As for the time, this game is listed at $4 on Steam, and it took me just under 3 hours to complete. Now, it does say that it'll take anywhere between 20 minutes and 120 minutes to complete, but in my experience, it took 3 hours. With all of that said, I give Somnus a sausage rating of 6.5 sausages out of 10. Somnus is an anomaly detection game where you have to traverse 13 levels. Most anomaly detection games I've played require you to play 8 levels, 10, maybe 12, but 13, this is higher than any other anomaly detection game I've played. Some of these anomalies are extremely easy, while others require a very keen eye. With that said though, some of these rooms might be bugged. The amount of rooms I traversed where I combed very carefully through every detail, seeing nothing wrong, progressing and then getting sent back to zero, it was quite frustrating. To give credit where credit is due, however, the developer explicitly states to report any bugs that you might find. The only issue is that I don't know what the bugs were, so, or if there were even any bugs to begin with. Maybe it was a skill issue on my part. I don't know. But the developer does ask the player to report any bugs that they might find. And if you are playing this game and you have any anomaly ideas, the developer said, please send some ideas to them. And if you're lucky, maybe they'll get implemented. So credit where credit is due. As for the graphics and the art, like I said, pretty middle of the road, pretty average, not good, not bad. Some things are good, some things are bad. You're going to have that with pretty much most games. This graphically and art style wise, pretty average. But also, like I said, what caught my eye is the medieval aesthetic. We've got plenty of anomaly detection games. This is the first one I've seen with knights, with the king, with swords. So I really like that. As for the soundtrack, it needs something. Violins, horns, a harp. I don't know, but it needs something. Not having a soundtrack could add to the ambiance, but that ambiance is more creepy than anything else, and the game itself isn't creepy. There are some elements that could be considered creepy, but as a whole, the game is not creepy. It's just an anomaly detection game with no jump scares. So by not having a soundtrack, the dev is doing himself a disservice, and it needs something. In fact, not having a soundtrack and only having the ambient noises of the fireplace and the door opening and closing and creaking, it made me feel sleepy. And you don't want your player base feeling sleepy, because if they're sleepy, they're not going to want to play the game. So I'm sure there are free assets somewhere where you can get free music that, you know, non-copyright, no royalties, anything like that. But it needs something. Lastly, the time. It took me just under 3 hours to complete, though it's advertised as 20 to 120 minutes. Is it a skill issue on my end? Maybe. I'm not going to say that it's not. I've played a handful of different anomaly detection games. I kind of know how this works. I know what to kind of look for. You know, every game's going to be different, but this isn't my first anomaly detection game. Were some of the anomalies so small that I just didn't recognize them? It's possible. It's entirely possible. I'm not going to say that it wasn't, but could it also have been bugged? I don't know. It is hard to say. But regardless, it took me 3 hours to complete a game that's advertised to be at most 2 hours long. Comparing that to the price, you know, $4 for a game that takes anywhere between let's just say 2 hours to be fair. It's not a bad price. If you beat it in 20 minutes, you might be a little disappointed that you spent $4 on a 20-minute game. So maybe reduce the game by $1, but then at that point, it's just $1, right? Are you gonna miss $1? It's up to you guys. At the end of the day, Somnus is just like any other anomaly detection game. You walk into a room, you see if there's an anomaly or not, and you either go forward or you go backward. And if you get it right, you progress. If you get it wrong, you go back to zero. While these games are a dime a dozen, what really caught my eye about it is the medieval setting, and I really like that. The biggest issue I really have with it is the lack of soundtrack. Add something to the soundtrack so other people don't fall asleep like I did. If the dev were to add a soundtrack to this, I would feel comfortable rating this a 7 minimum. 7 is pretty average, and this is a pretty average anomaly detection game, though it could be higher because, like I said, the medieval setting is really what sets this game apart from every other anomaly detection game. So if you're on the fence about it, you know, maybe wait until it's 25% off. I think $3 is a fair price for this game. And that's my review of Somnus. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below. But if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also have a Twitch channel and I have a Discord for both content creators and casual viewers alike, so consider joining me on both of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to both of them in the description below. Lastly, I want to shout out the thumbnail artist for this video. They created this thumbnail for me because they are trying to build a portfolio, and so we just came to an agreement that they would make me a free thumbnail if they get to use it for their portfolio. So if you are interested in a thumbnail like this, go to the description below to find their Reddit account or their email. Their Reddit account is really_my_guy_777. Fantastic thumbnail. Thank you again for making this thumbnail for me, and I hope it looks good in your portfolio, man. Thank you. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and cut my review here. Mahoney out.